Hello and welcome to the second episode of A Captain's Analysis. In this video I'll be talking about how to pick your ship and the several different factors that go into it. This is more aimed towards the competitive level of play in a 2v2 setting, although these principles can apply to any public lobby and any amount of ships, 2v2, 3v3, or 4v4. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoy. So I have video playing in the background and I'm going to address all of the clips very specifically, but for now I want to cover the 4 key points that you should consider when picking your ship and picking your ship's loadouts. The first thing you should consider is, what are you comfortable with flying? What is your crew comfortable with repairing? And how comfortable is your ally co-captain with your ship pick? The next thing you need to think about is, what kind of fight do you want? You and your ally co-captain need to make a decision. Do you want this to be a long-range fight? Do you want it to be a medium-range fight? Or do you want it to be a close-range fight? The third thing you need to consider is, how are you going to make this fight happen? How are you going to initiate the engagement against the enemy? There's several different ways you can do it, and it's something you should be discussing with your co-captain. Do you want to flank? Do you want to use someone as bait? Do you want to charge straight in? Do you want to methodically close the distance with them? Or maybe you just want somebody to stay long range, make an opening for your ally, and then your ally closes that gap. And your fourth consideration is, how is the enemy team countering you? Can you pick different ships to counter them? Can you simply swap the guns on your ships so that their ships aren't as effective against you? So now I want to go into these video clips from SCS 139 and I want to talk about each ship's loadouts, and then I want to go and talk about these 4 key points from each team's perspective. So for this first example, we're on the map, Fight Over Fernfield, and we have the red teams with this Pyramidion, okay? And they have a Hades and a Banshee on the front, and they have a Gatling and a Flak on their left side. And their ally is a Goldfish with a Hwacha, and a Carronade on the left and a Gatling on the right side, so your typical Hwacha build. Now these are 2 very close range ships on a relatively open map. So and then they're going against the blue team, which is a Mobula. Now this Mobula has a kind of an awkward build, but not necessarily for what they're fighting. They have a Mercury on top with a Hades on the bottom and a Gatling on the bottom left, with a Flak on the top right. And then their ally ship is a Galleon with the Hades, the Lumberjack, the Flak, and the Carronade and the Hwacha. So your typical Galleon build. So let's look at red team and see if they considered these 4 fundamentals. Number 1, what are they comfortable with? These 2 have been flying the Goldfish and the Pyramidion for a while. They're comfortable with that ship. That's no problem. Number 2, how do they want this fight to be? This is good. One has a Hwacha and the other has a Hades Banshee, so they're both looking for medium to close range engagements. So they're on the same page there. So then our third and fourth consideration, they kind of mingle together in this case. So how are they going to engage? They're on the same page here, which is good. That's good that they're on the same page. It looks like what they're trying to do is charge straight in and sort of use that Hades Banshee to create an opening by putting enough pressure onto the Mobula so that there's a little bit less pressure on the Goldfish as he closes the gap. And then the Goldfish, in turn, tries to disable either the Galleon or the Mobula, and which in turn allows the Pyramidion to close the gap. But it's Fight Over Fernfield, first off, so that should always be considered when thinking about number 3 is the map. How you're going to engage is, the map's always prevalent to that. And then number 4 is, how are they countering us? So that Mobula tries to counter the Pyramidion by taking a Mercury, Hades, and Gatling. He's trying to get as much piercing power as he can. He has the Flak on the top right just so he can get a kill. But he's trying to get as much piercing power as he can so that he can completely destroy that Pyramidion's armor while the Pyramidion's, trudging along and open up for his ally, the Galleon, to get the kill on the Pyramidion. And it does seem to work for them. By the time red is able to close that gap that they need to, blue's already, done about 50% damage to the red team. It just because the blue team, their sole purpose is to sit back long range. So the Pyramidions get encountered. and there's no real response to it coming from the red team. So this next match is a really interesting one. So this features a goldfish with a watcher on the front, carronade on the left, and a Gatling on the right. And then it has the Mobula with the Mercury, Artemis, carronade, Artemis on top left, and a mine launcher on the top right. And then finally it has, on the blue team, it has a Hades with a flamethrower on the bottom left, Artemis on bottom right, Artemis on top left, and a Gatling on top right. And then finally, the blue squid is a mine on the front with a Banshee on the right and a Gatling on the rear. So I really like this match a lot because of the heavy emphasis on that fourth key point. That fourth key point is, how am I being counterpicked, and how can I switch my ship a little bit to mitigate the effects of that pick? So the squid, the blue squid, is kind of being countered by that red watchafish. So as a result, the blue squid doesn't switch his ship, he just puts a mine launcher on the front. Now the effects of that goldfish are mitigated. It makes it much more difficult to engage as that red goldfish. Then we have the red Mobula. The red Mobula is kind of being countered by that squid. So as a response to that, he doesn't switch his ship. Instead, he puts a carronade on the bottom left with a mine launcher on the top right, and has thus reduced the effectiveness of that squid. Then we have the blue Mobula. The blue Mobula is kind of being countered by that watchafish, so he puts a flamethrower on the bottom left to kind of mitigate the effects. And you just see this go through the whole team, just picking and counterpicking and just making slight tweaks to their gun choices in order to mitigate the effects. And I think that's really important, and that definitely shows a high level of competency as well as just good coordination between captain and crew and captain and co-captain. So I like this next match as well. So right here we have a Mobula that has a mine launcher on top, two Artemis on the bottom, a flak top left, Gatling top right. The Galleon is a standard watcher Galleon with the Gatling and the three watches and the carronade. And then we have a Carrowfish. He's going to be using his carronade primarily. He has the Banshee on the left and the carronade on the right, just in case guns. And then we have the other Galleon, which is an interesting choice. He has a Hades on the top with a watch on the bottom and a Minotaur. And then his right side is a watch carronade. So now, both of these teams have a very similar dynamic for the fourth key point, which is how are we being countered. So on the red team, we have the Galleon and the Mobula. The Galleon is taking a Gatling with watches, and that's it. It's not going to change. So the counterpick game gets pushed onto his teammate, onto that Mobula. As a result, the Mobula puts the mine launcher on top. That's to help counter the goldfish. And that's it. That's all that happens on that team. And the same thing happens on the blue team. The carronade fish is going into the game. There's no changing that. The carronade fish is going. That's what's going to stay. So as a result, the blue Galleon decides to put a Hades and a Minotaur on his ship in order to help his carronade fish. The counterpick game got pushed on to the blue team's Galleon. It's kind of interesting how that works, and sometimes that's how these matches will play out. You're going to get an ally captain that only wants to take a specific ship for whatever reason, and you're going to have to support that ally. Now, you should be talking to him, and it should be a mutual agreement that it's okay to take this ship, it's okay to take this loadout, and as a result, you should build your ship around supporting him or countering the enemy that needs to be countered so that he can do his job. And communication went on. This is SCS 139. This isn't some pub lobby. That carronade fish was taken because both these captains agreed that that's what they wanted. And then the blue Galleon decided to take a Minotaur and a Hades to support that effort. Just like on the red team, that watch a Galleon, that was discussed between the captains. They both agreed that they wanted to watch a Galleon. And so the Mobula took a mine launcher in order to support those efforts. And my point is that sometimes the counter game doesn't have to involve every ship in the match, be it a 2v2, 3v3, 4v4. Sometimes you can just take the counter picking and shove that responsibility onto a different ship. We see that in this match, and that is a very effective method and one that should be utilized. that's going to conclude this week's episode of A Captain's Analysis, Picking and Counterpicking. I want to give a shout out to Huskarr, who gave me the idea to go with this type of video, and I'll probably make another video of this in the future because it is such an important aspect of Guns Victorious Online. So thanks, Huskarr, for that one. And then I want to give a shout out to ThatLysanyaGuy, who was the one casting SCS 139. I'll put a link in his description to his Twitch channel. Some of the audio on these streams is phenomenal. So thanks to ThatLysanyaGuy for that one. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good night. Appreciate you guys watching, and have a good one.